Hello and welcome to this week's roundup by blockchaingamer.biz. Today is Friday, the 31st of March. I am your host and editor at blockchaingamer.biz, Jenny Jordan, and with me today is co-host, editor-in-chief, John Jordan. Hello.
Hello, is it that time again?
How are you doing? It is Friday. Right, so this week we have seen Sky Mavis announcing some new games coming on the Ronin blockchain. And one of those is the PC shooter game, The Machines Arena. And another one is Tribe Studios Open World MMO, Tribe is this Island of Solas. What would you say? Are any of these anything to be excited about?
I think that there's a bit more context in sort of what they're doing here. So the Ronin blockchain obviously at this point has been sort of the Sky Mavis' own blockchain for running Axie Infinity. So I guess like a lot of companies back in the day, it decided it couldn't run on Ethereum, like the mainnet Ethereum. And it tried various things back in the day. It tried this thing called Loom Network, which a lot of people sort of tried. And
so why was that then? Why did that not work?
Well, it's too gas prices on Ethereum go up, are quite volatile, so they go up and down. And if you've got, if you're paying sort of gas for a $1 or $5 gas for $1,000 sort of value transaction, that's fine. But for games, might have very small value transactions. You might be buying like $5 Axie or something like that. So if you're paying like $2 in gas, it doesn't really work. So basically, everyone back in the day sort of made those decisions, and sort of like Dapper Labs with CryptoKitties made their own blockchain Flow, and a lot of people went to Polygon, and sort of the Sky Mavis people basically decided they were going to make their own blockchain, which is where Ronin is. So there's been this sort of long period of time in which they sort of launched Ronin as a very closed, centralized system, and gradually they've been sort of rolling out more decentralization, sort of. So they've been more, the tokens have been more useful, and they have these now 22 validators, and anyone with 250,000 tokens can set up their own validator if they have the technical knowledge, and that's how the blockchain runs. So they're still rolling all these things out, but up to this point, unlike something like Ethereum, where if anyone can create an application running on Ethereum, you just download the code and write the solidity, and you pay the money to launch it. But with Ronin, it's been centralized, so only Sky Mavis have been allowed to launch stuff on there. So the interesting bit here is this is the first time where other companies other than Sky Mavis are being allowed to do stuff. So it's still not fully decentralized. Not like me and you can just rock in and create a game on Ronin. It's still, they're controlling it still. So I guess this is in one of those phrases. This is sort of the end of the beginning, or whatever. I mean, this is like the first steps. So I wouldn't personally place too much focus on these sort of 5 games. But it's more that now they've sort of announced these games, and developers who are interested can now sign up. There's like a sign up form you can sign up to get onto Ronin. And the interesting thing about Ronin clearly is, it has a bunch of people playing Axie already. I mean, obviously far fewer than there were a year ago. But it has it's a blockchain with a fairly sizable game on it, with lots of assets on it, with lots of different tokens. So on the Ronin blockchain, there's sort of Wrap Teeth and Wrapped USDC, and obviously all the Axie tokens as well. And they have like decks, so you can change tokens and stuff like that. So it's sort of quite a good platform. And the people who are on Ronin at the moment are people who play games, because that's the only thing you can do on Ronin. So I guess it's more interesting from that point of view. In terms of the games, I guess the interesting one was the Machines Arena from what they're called. What's the developer called? We were just discussing it the other day. Directive Games, who are Icelandic / Chinese, and this is it's sort of not quite a MOBA, but sort of like a top-down team-based sort of shooter. So that's sort of interesting as a sort of fast action game, PC game. But the most interesting thing I think from those 5 games were 3 of them were mobile games. So obviously the people who've been mainly playing Axie up to this point have been people in places like the Philippines and Indonesia and India, and they've been playing it via mobile. So the majority of Axie activity was playing it on an Android device via the APK you downloaded. So that's clearly the audience that's there, and that's sort of, I think, where with Axie, they'll want to be doing some sort of PC high-end games, but I think a lot of their stuff is going to be based around mobile. So So there's a cricket game from India, which is sort of interesting because that won't appeal to people in the Philippines, obviously. That would just appeal to people in India. And there's actually these guys, Battle Bears, which is a game that's been around in mobile for like over 10 years. I know the guys there fairly well, so it's interesting to see they come up. That's it's sort of a cute sort of. It's sort of like, it's not quite teddy bear, but sort of like a teddy bear shooter. So that's sort of nice, sort of casual shooter, not casual with mid-core elements. So that's interesting. And then there's another like a match 3 game out of a South Korean startup. So we'll sort of see, how those games work. And I think they are sort of games that if they weren't on Ronin, you'd sort of worry a little bit how they were going to, sort of find their audience. Because they're not, I think a lot of the stuff we write about are these sort of massive big projects, and they're 3D shooters or they're massive strategy games, and they've raised tons of money, and they have AAA exactly. And these, I don't want to be sort of mean about them, but these are not AAA games. But that's not what you need on Ronin. Ronin already has a bunch of players, and just what it wants is sort of more games that they can play on. And so I think I think AAA games will come to Ronin, and maybe there's an argument that I'm sure Directive Games would argue that the Machine Arena is a AAA game or something like that, But I think it's more interesting for the fact that it's not those sort of things. It's more focused on these sort of emerging markets. They've not said how they're going to distribute the games. Actually, the Machines Arena is on the Epic Game Store. It's not live on it, but there's a like a product page for it. Mm-hmm. So that's going to go through the Epic Game Store as a big PC game, but people in the Philippines are not going to be so much downloading that, I wouldn't think. So I think with the mobile stuff, they'll probably do it as APKs. So you'll just download it through the Sky Mavis or Ronin sort of web page, and you'll sideload it onto your phone, and they won't bother about the Google Store so much. I mean, we'll see. That's my view. But
it's encouraging news, really, in the light of if you think of it's about a year ago, isn't it? The big 625 million.
It's about a year ago. Yeah.
So it's and I think the co-founder has sort of said that it's actually been a good thing in the sense that, all the pressure they've been put under, but they're coming out stronger the other end. And so that's something for the whole industry really to learn about, isn't it?
Yeah, I think that's definitely the sort of the narrative arc there that they had. I think they sort of, it's very, for a very sort of small, sort of scrappy company, you sort of, it doesn't seem very real. I think when what happens is it sort of seems like a bit of a dream, and then suddenly you get like hacked by the North Korean government. That's sort of, you realise you're sort of, this is serious. We have to take this. This is serious in the real world. Probably behind the scenes they've been spoken to by the FBI or the CIA, or they probably had interactions with proper government organisations, say all this sort of stuff. So I think they have definitely sort of grown up as a sort of corporation, and I think now there is a lot more sort of serious, and I think having spoken to some of them fairly recently, they're a lot more confident in their ability to do things rather than relying on sort of third parties. I think previously they sort of thought, we're a little startup, we've had this big success, but we have to rely on there's all these big companies in the world, and they'll help us go mass market. And I think they've sort of realized, as lots of blockchain companies in general have, that the rest of the world isn't actually necessarily very keen on it's certainly encouraging blockchain, and obviously at the moment as we see in the US actively trying to sort of clamp down on allowing people to get involved with crypto. So I think Sky Mavis as a company have sort of said, right, we've grown up, and now we're going to take quite a confident attitude to what we're going to do, and we're not really going to worry about anyone else. We're building our stuff, and that's what our advantage is, which I think is is definitely a positive. So
yeah. So more news this week has been the news about block lords and where they're up to. They're on Polygon, Immutable. Can you give us a little bit of a background check on them?
Yeah, we're not quite sure, are we? So Block Lords is a project has been actually around for quite a long time. I remember it buying the first NFTs that they launched on Ethereum back in 2019, and then actually they also launched some stuff on Tron and this blockchain now we don't really talk about called Neo, Chinese blockchain back in the day. So they've been around for a while. I guess we could see this as like the second version of Block Lords, and I think it's an interesting project. It's like a pretty hardcore strategy game, medieval sort of style. Got some interesting stuff, concepts there. I guess the confusion around this. So the press release they put out was that they were going to deploy the game on Polygon. So that's not particularly surprising news. Lots of people are sort of going for Polygon at the moment with this sort of. They didn't mention this ZK EVM stuff, but lots of people are going to Polygon to deploy their games.
Okay.
I guess the slight confusion here was that the assumption was that they were going to be on Immutable X, because actually they have a whole bunch of NFTs that they've been minting in 2022, maybe even 2023, I can't remember. Fairly recently, they've been minting out these. They had a chess sale, and it minted out these banners, and then you could burn these banners to create characters and all this sort of stuff was going on, and it was all on Immutable X. So, even with this deal between Immutable X and Polygon, this press release was like, no, they're going on Polygon. They're not using the immutable technology that's using Polygon's technology. It was pretty sort of clear, but what wasn't clear was this press release didn't mention at all the fact they already had a bunch of NFTs on Immutable X. So we don't quite know. So we sort of wrote the headline saying Block Lords is moving from Immutable X to Polygon, and then the PR came back and said, well, sort of, no, they're not. And so we've sort of emailed them back saying, well, what's happening to all these things on Immutable X? And they've not got back to us. So they don't entirely know what they're doing. But at the moment, if you go to the Block Lords website, you basically, maybe they are going to have the assets on both chains. So you can sort of switch between chains and see what's going on there, which I think is, is not good. It's not a good user experience because it's just confusing. To have some assets on one chain and then other assets on another chain. But it seems like at the moment, at least, the game is going to run on Polygon. So I don't know. Maybe it's one of these ones that's a bit of a sort of a.
So it's a similar situation for Metalcore. What's going on with that game?
Yeah. Well, Metalcore is I guess a bit in some ways the same, but a bit clearer in the sense that Metalcore is this big open world 3D mech shooter. And if I can get it right, originally it said it was going to be on Immutable X, and then it said it was going to be on Polygon, and now it said it's gone back to Immutable X. So, and they said they're using this Immutable X ZK EVM stuff, which is very hot, which actually uses Polygon's technology under the hood. But the advantage that Metalcore have is they have NFTs live, but they've been minted on the Ethereum mainnet. So they've not been minting on different, networks, and then, have this sort of situation where, how do you use them? They've always minted the stuff on Ethereum, and they've never said they're going to run on the Ethereum mainnet because no one ever would. So. It's sort of clearer that that those assets are on Ethereum, and however they're going to take them onto Polygon, they're going to have a migration process, which lots of Sandbox has done that. Actually, incidentally, Champions Ascension is doing a similar thing. So it has all its assets, a whole bunch of stuff on Ethereum mainnet, and it's announced it's going to be using Polygon. And Forte as a platform. So they've said, we're going to have to migrate all our NFTs from Ethereum onto Polygon. And that's not something you necessarily want to do, but that's sort of something where if you're selling sort of NFTs that you hope are going to be fairly expensive, the only place to put them really, or has been Ethereum. Polygon a bit now, and we're seeing a bit more activity there. And I guess this is one of the sort of just one of these sorts of situations where we think, I guess, blockchain brings a lot of advantages to games, but also it brings an awful lot of complexity.
Yeah, and it also kind of, I think the question arises really, is it really relevant anymore? Which chains these games are going on? It's big news when it happens and big announcements, but really, when we on the big list that we've been running for a year now, we've accumulated, I think, 79 chains in total. And so like you mentioned before, all these small chains that all these games used to be on in the past. And so, what does it say about a game, I guess, if a game is going on Polygon, do we know anything about the game's character or anything about, do you know what I mean, advantages in that game compared to if that game was going on a different chain?
No, I think it's from that point of view, from an outsider's point of view, it's sort of irrelevant. I think if you're a very techie person, then there may be very specific things you want to do in your game that you will feel some technologies will be more suited towards. So that can be the case. I mean, certainly Immutable X was a sort of a useful chain for creating loads of NFTs, but you couldn't really run sort of smart contracts on it in the way you can with these new ZK EVM sort of techs. So there's a technical sort of thing there. But I mean, in general, my view has always been game developers should push the decision of what blockchain they're on to be as late as possible, and not mint any NFTs, because basically I think probably in the case of these games they've made sort of the right decisions, but they've, by making decisions maybe slightly, particularly Blockwells, by making decisions too early they feel like they had to get assets out maybe to raise money or something, then they've been forced to make a decision which is then created a lot of confusion, and people don't, when people have assets on one chain, they don't always migrate them over to other chains, and so you sort of fragmented some of your audience, and some of your audience will be probably quite annoyed because they spent hundreds of dollars buying these assets, and that's like, oh, I've got to transfer them over. I can't be bothered anymore, and I can't really sell them because no one wants to sell them on that. So it's just sort of we've got sort of friction in the onboarding system. So you want to avoid that as much as possible. And I guess there are things like there's technology. I guess a bit like Forte, but stuff like Stardust as well, which basically means developers can sort of make their game and then they can choose what blockchains are supported. From the blockchains that something like this middleware supports, you can then choose sort of a bit further down the line when you sort of see. I think at the moment, Polygon, it's clearly the sort of the one that's doing well.
I think we've seen so many cases now with games that are trying really hard, really early on to do a bit too much. In terms of maybe an attempt to generate utility to their projects, and they announce a token. I mean, what game hasn't got a token these days? But do they really need that? And what are they going to utilize this for? It just seems like maybe overemphasizing some of these decisions, and they rush them a little bit, which then, like you say, annoy the players and the audience, and they realize maybe they shouldn't have done that. I don't know. What are your thoughts? I mean, are maybe projects trying too hard to create this sort of functional utility in their project?
Well, I think that's changed now. But I think up to this point, obviously, people have been launching tokens and selling NFTs to fundraise. So that's the reason that they've had to make those decisions, because they want to raise money in order to do that, and that's I guess the sort of, thankfully, the sort of trend in blockchain games is that's happening less and less because so many people have been burnt by buying assets and no game ever turns up, or a terrible game turns up. So I think we're definitely moving away from that. But I think the other thing is just developers have not had to, up to this point, have not had to make decisions that are sort of quite so significant. If you're making a console game and you say we're announcing it for PlayStation 5, and then further down the line you go, we're going to actually do it for Xbox. I mean, that's not ideal, but that's just it's almost a commercial decision. That's not actually very difficult to handle. Really. Whereas and even moving between blockchains isn't sort of difficult technically, but obviously it's more serious because people have I guess the equivalent would be you say this game's going to go on PlayStation 5, and you get loads of pre-orders, and then you go, oh, it's not going to be on PlayStation 5, we're going to actually do it on Xbox. And so most of the PlayStation 5 people don't have an Xbox. They're complaining because they want their money back. And
so players did go out and buy a Nintendo or a PlayStation 5 just to get that game, and then suddenly
but it just doesn't happen in console. I just can't think of a game that ever did that. They may go, we're PlayStation 5 exclusive for half a year, and then we're going on to Xbox. But you just don't do one or the other. Whereas this sort of blockchain thing is much more, it's much more complicated and problematic.
Yeah, you actually had a talk this week with Immutable's Robbie Ferguson, which was mentioned that kind of competition in the past between Polygon and Immutable, which now isn't anymore, just a ZK EVM rollout.
Yeah, and I think that was maybe part of the block laws thing, that they didn't want to mention Immutable. They didn't want to mention they were on Immutable because now sort of Polygon and Immutable are sort of not quite best buddies, but they're not competing in the same way as they were before. Previously, they were literally throwing money at people saying, "Come to our chain, don't go on their chain." So I think maybe that's part of the thing with block lords, was they didn't really. Polygon didn't need to make a big fuss about how they'd stolen this game away from Immutable X, because that's not what they want to do anymore. They're all sort of part of the same happy family sort of thing. So I think that's probably the reason that PR's got a bit trigger happy about that, because it just doesn't play into the sort of it's the truth, but doesn't play into sort of the current politics of how they want to do that. But it was a good interview with Robbie. I mean, he's very sort of clear and sort of forthright about sort of stuff that's going on there. The bit I enjoyed, I have to say, the most was talking to him about sort of Gods Unchained, which is this game that's been around again for 5 years, and again, that was all those cards originally were minted on Ethereum mainnet, and then they had to move them all over to Immutable X. So I think just projects that have been around for a long time have had to deal with these sort of problems, and it's sort of interesting to find out what they've learned from that, and how they, because blockchain just makes lots of things much more complicated. And Gods Unchained is sort of the other thing with Gods Unchained is they've generated loads of these cards over 5 years, and that just makes the game harder for people to sort of get their heads around, because there's hundreds of different cards, and you can't really, you can have some control over them, but you can't, if you're in a non-blockchain game, you can sort of just remove, just take cards away. You can just remove cards from if there's an unbalanced card, you can just remove it, or you can sort of tone, they call nerfing it. They can change the stats on it depending on how you create your blockchain cards. If you have the stats in the blockchain, which you probably wouldn't do, but it's just much harder with the immutable assets, because the whole point is, once they're on a blockchain, you can't take them away; they're there forever.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah.
Which is sort of also the strength, that's. But there's always a sort of flip side, I suppose.
Yeah, you'll find that interview on our website if you're interested in hearing all of it. And then we also have the mobile arcade Arc 8 announcing some big updates to their roadmap. They've got the NFT collection, they've got new app features and changes to gameplay. And they also looking to boost the utility of the GMEE token. So, do you want to elaborate a bit on that one?
Yeah. So I mean, this is sort of we assume it's arcade. I always call it arcade, but maybe you said it's arcade. I don't know. But anyway, it's a spelt arcade, and they're sort of the company behind Gamey is a Czech company, and originally that was a Web 2, or still is a Web 2 mobile sort of collection of sort of hyper casual games, and you play them and you sort of win. You can gradually win real money, but there's you have to sort of earn up to 10. You have to earn £10 in the app before they'll credit you £10. And obviously, blockchain means they can do that much sort of simpler with their own token, which is the Gamey token. So they've sort of taken that. They sort of copied that across, sort of thing. That's what Arcade originally was, but obviously for the point of this thing to really work as a blockchain project, they want to decentralize it. So at the moment they're sort of putting their mini games in there, and they're sort of setting the prizes and they're running it. But over time they want to allow the community to do that. So if we were a game developer who want to make a little mobile game and put it in Arcade, we could do that if we sort of got we could put in a proposal saying, look at our really cool, I don't know, kart racing game. We're happy. We're happy to give 50% of all the advertising money we get in that game away to the game players in this big tournament. And so the idea is all the arcade people will be like, okay, that's fantastic. They'd all vote it in, and then our game would go in, and obviously you have an ecosystem going then. So they're going down that sort of route. It's difficult. Decentralizing stuff is really difficult because the community doesn't always want to do the same things that the developer sort of wants them to do. So we'll sort of see how that happens. I guess the interesting bits there, they were saying since that project's been live, their users have created 2.5 million wallets, which is quite a lot. Although part of that, I think a lot of that would have come from, they were before the thing launched, they were giving away the Gamey tokens for free. So I assume lots of people were making wallets just to sort of farm the tokens. But they said 53,800 Gamey token holders, wallets, which is sort of reasonable. I mean, I don't know how many of those are active. So they got a reasonable sort of community there. So we'll sort of see how they can sort of build that out. Yeah.
Good. We got some releases. The notable Eternal Dragons tournament starting today, running till the 2nd of April. We have the Glimmering Mint.
Yeah.
We had the Legends of Mara that come out of the Yuga Labs.
The Yuga Labs, yeah.
Archworld. I think you wrote an article about that.
Oh yeah. No, it's quite. I mean, Yeah, it's just quite a lot of sort of activity happening now, and people sort of doing. I think that one was a
We saw
pre-registration.
Hunters on Chain yesterday, trying
Oh yeah,
to attempt their mint of the last mint of the Genesis Hunters, is it?
yeah,
Second
yeah,
one and last
yeah,
one, but that didn't work for some reason, technical.
yeah. Technical reasons. Yeah, I think.
So they're trying again, aren't they, today,
Yeah,
4 o'clock?
yeah. I just think it's too popular. I mean, it's always the problem when.
With this free mint.
Well, no, it's not a free mint though. It's not that one's not a free mint.
Oh no,
But
it's not. Sorry. Okay.
no. But I think just projects that are just very people are very excited about. They just the website just gets spammed and they can't. And in that case, it's not their website. It's Magic Eden, the Magic Eden launchpad. So,
Yeah.
yeah.
Okay.
So yeah, plenty going on. Yeah, and you're going to talk us through your game of the week.
Oh yes.
What's your game of the week this week?
Clash Royale this week.
Yeah.
And we got the article up on the website. They've actually got we've got good interview with the co-founder as well. And yeah, so I tried that game on my phone, and it's a battle royale.
And you're an expert at battle royales, aren't you?
I'm becoming one. I'm an absolute beginner. I had never played one with the mobile touchscreen joystick, so that was a new one. And I have to say, after one game, I don't think it's the game's fault. I'm just not really a fan of it. But maybe I'll warm up to it. But so you basically deploy into the map from top down, and I quite like that. And yeah, and then you basically just run around trying to gather your weapons and shoot each other. So what I liked is the simplistic idea. It's not super, advanced what you have to do, like when you play some of these CCGs, for instance, which to get the hang around hundreds of different cards and strengths and elements and stuff. Whereas here's fairly straightforward. And yeah, I didn't do super well to start with, but then eventually, even a beginner like me, you get your first kill, and then you start getting climb up the ranks, and yeah, quickly become quite an encouraging game that you want to go back and play more. So I would recommend people to check that one out.
And the good thing about that is, as a mobile game, it is just available through the Google Play Store and the Apple App Store. So they're sort of they're sort of one of those first games to sort of be trying out exactly how you can put a blockchain game through the app stores, and I think they've been very careful what they let you do in the app.
They had a mint this week. Or was it last week?
They had a free mint. Yeah. I don't quite sure if they were sort of avatar characters or something.
Part of the mint madness on Magic Eden, wasn't it?
Yeah. Definitely one to check out.
Yeah, absolutely. Right, so that's it for this week. Thank you very much, and we'll see you next week.
Goodbye.